don't know why we should be capping rent. I have a bit of an issue with what
you're getting a lot of people falling out of the private rented market into social housing, which doesn't exist for a lot of people.
I think we just need to work a bit harder. So
what?
I had let me explain. So I was like 18 at university, couldn't afford my rent. I started a little side business and I grew that, and that provided, I worked like my backside off for like 3 years, and I just worked 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. and I just smashed it. And I think people who are struggling, I don't think they're working as hard as they could be.
Oh,
I think everybody, I think there is so much opportunity that we have. And even if you know, I understand that's not everybody, but I feel like for the vast proportion of people, I think it's true. And I think if we want to be successful...
What gives you that impression?
Because I look at people around me and
what?
You know, not being able to afford houses, and I know it's a stereotype, and I'm also a young person, but there is a lot of going out and there is a lot of eating out. Like, to be fair, that is what happens.
We're back to avocados.
No. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Netflix?
But I do think, my generation does have a bit of a problem with spending. I do think that is a thing. I do it as well. I think everybody does. If you really tone it back, everything, it is possible to buy a house. I've just bought my first house. It is possible if you work really hard. And I think that if everybody had the same mentality and the drive that I have, I feel like there'll be so many more people who can lift themselves out of.
Do you know what, John?
Problems.
Do you know what I'm going to do? I've not done this before, but I'm going to make an exception for you if that's okay. Do me a favour, stay on the line. I'm going to get you to say this directly to someone who is working their absolute backside off and is struggling to make ends meet, who is working every hour that God sends, trying to put food on the table for their children, trying to keep a roof over their head, and hears from you that they could be doing more. Stay there, because I want you to say it directly to someone's face. You ready, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark's in Wimbledon. Mark?
Hi. Yeah, I wasn't intending to phone, actually. I just sent a text. I'm just really concerned by the statement that was made that people who are struggling aren't working as hard as they could be. I'd just really like to hear more about that, because I'm just kind of wondering how that works.
So it was, I guess my statement is more, and I'm talking about people of my generation, especially, I know what we heard from the lady who were called earlier, who's struggling to pay her bills. Obviously, we can look at this and look at extremities like that, and if there's people like that who are struggling, then absolutely that's where the government should come in and support. And if they're not, then that's a government failure. Absolutely, without a doubt. But I think there are some people who are struggling with rent and struggling with bills. I think everybody, as a country, we could all be working hard. I think be able to lift ourselves out of these problems. And I'm a massive believer in entrepreneurship as a solution for that.
Mark,
and
you should be working harder.
Well, can I just come in? I'm sorry, because I think that's not quite what you said. I think you said anybody who's struggling isn't actually working as hard as they could, which is not quite the same as what you just said.
That was my point originally. So it wasn't the people, the minority who are really, really struggling and have got children of single parents. It was as a generation, we have spending problems. We can tone it back. We can all work harder. We can all work evenings, freelancing, doing this, doing that, extra jobs. We can all do it. I've done it, and I was able to take myself out of those situations.
So you're talking now specifically, John, having started talking about everybody else, you're now talking specifically about your generation who perhaps don't have children. Is that right?
No, not my generation. I think just I'm not going to be able to put what my statement is demographics. Can everybody?
Well, who are you talking about, John? Who are you saying work harder? Are you telling Mark to work harder?
I don't know Mark's situation, unfortunately.
Well, I can tell you my situation. I mean, firstly, I'm not quite sure what generation has to do with it, because I think struggling for me at the moment transcends generations. I think there are people in their early 20s who are really struggling. I think there are elderly people who are struggling. So, to be honest, I'm not quite sure what generation has to do with this, because I think struggling is struggling, and I think that the generational thing, in terms of my situation, I'm not struggling actually. I mean, I've worked very hard as well, and I've pulled myself to a position where I'm not struggling. I actually enjoy quite a nice quality of life, so I've got nothing to complain about. But I certainly, when I see people who are struggling, I certainly don't think they need to be working harder. I mean, some people do need to be working. Some people simply don't work very hard, and that's the thing. But I don't really understand what that has to do with struggle, because I don't think there's too much of a correlation between how hard you work and how much you get back at the moment.
So I totally take your point, but I do think if we look at a lot of individual cases about people who are claiming benefit and things like that, I think there are opportunities where people could be working harder. That's just my opinion as someone who was there.
Well, sure. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but again, with respect, that isn't quite what you said. I mean, I think sometimes, I can make a point and I don't quite say what I mean. And with respect, it sounds like what you're saying now isn't quite what you said there. You made a statement.
Yeah, I mean, I'll listen back to it. And if I made a mistake, I totally apologise. But I don't want to be painted out as this kind of right-wing, horrible person who thinks that people who are struggling should be working harder. It's not absolutely what I meant. It was more of a...
Just the people on benefits?
No.
Well, that's what you said. You said there are some people on benefits who need to be working
Some individual cases.
Like who? What example have you seen?
So I haven't... I don't want to talk about individual cases, but I can reference a couple of friends of mine who are in this situation. And I think they're claiming money from the government wrongly, in my opinion, and they're not working as hard as they could be for their future.